Trump insists the U.S. still holds the card, saying he's in no rush to make a deal with Tehran.
All right, let's get to it. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst is live on the ground in Tel Aviv with more. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Iran's foreign ministry says they are reviewing a new U.S. proposal. This comes as Pakistan's interior minister made a last-minute trip to the Iranian capital of Tehran for talks aimed at moving a possible agreement forward. Iran's foreign minister spoke yesterday with a warning for the United States.
Should it become necessary, should the interests of the state dictate that we prepare ourselves in the field of diplomacy, of discussion, of negotiation, then we will prepare ourselves, but with strength, the same strength with which the armed forces prepare themselves in defense of the country.
President Trump says he's in no hurry to make a deal since the U.S. naval blockade is causing significant economic damage to Iran and weakening the regime. He indicated the war could resume quickly if Iran doesn't respond well to this proposal.
We're all ready to go. We have to get the right answers. We're dealing with some people, and actually, I must tell you, we're dealing with some very good people. We're dealing with people that are, I think, far more reasonable than the people that are really no longer with us.
With a focus on Iran's nuclear program and the Strait of Hormuz, the Islamic Republic recently created what they call the Persian Gulf Strait Authority to force vessels to coordinate directly with Iran in order to pass through the strait. Iran is still playing games as it relates to these negotiations, and there are real questions as the clock is ticking. Guys?
So, Trey, what could you tell us about the conversation President Trump had with Bibi Netanyahu on Tuesday, where we understand it's so unusual? For the most part, the Prime Minister's office has not put out any statement, and the president really hasn't vehemently denied that they got angry at each other.
Yeah, reports indicate there was a lengthy President Trump and the Israeli leader, Prime Minister Netanyahu, as it relates to what comes next in the region. And remember, yesterday, we heard from administration officials who indicated the United States is locked and loaded. Well, the Israelis are also locked and loaded, and there is coordination, I'm told by regional sources, at the highest level between these two countries in preparation for combat operations to resume. But look, there are two separate goals here, and this is really a crossroads for the region. We have to look at the goals of the United States and the goals of the Israelis. And they are similar but different because Israel understands that the Iranians pose a much more direct regional threat as it relates to their proxies in places like southern Lebanon, inside Gaza, and in Yemen. And the United States is looking at the country's nuclear program as the largest threat. And so you have things like ballistic missiles that are on the table for negotiations, but you also have these proxy groups that the Israelis want addressed if there is a broader agreement. And so the United States and Israel are not against a deal with Iran. They're against the wrong deal with Iran, but the wrong deal is different based on who you talk to. And so there are major questions about the days ahead and what that coordination will look like. Say, despite some of those disagreements, both Israel and the United States remain on the same page as it relates to the threat from Iran.
Well, Trey, the president has been public about it. Essentially, we're not even getting past point one of a deal.
Yeah, President Trump is not going to accept a limited deal with Iran. He's been very clear he's not willing to make concessions with the Iranian regime as it relates to their nuclear program, that highly enriched uranium, or the Strait of Hormuz. And this is a different approach than the Iranians are used to. You think back to the Obama administration when ultimately a deal was reached and pallets of cash were delivered to the Iranian regime. They used that cash to fund the military program that they are using to threaten U.S. forces and allies today. President Trump doesn't want that to happen. He understands the Iranians are trying to play a long game here. They're trying to wait out the United States, but the president has strategic patience at the negotiating table and on the battlefield. And so we're in a critical window here. This is a window where two choices have to be made by the Iranians. Are they willing to go into deeper negotiations with a good faith memorandum of understanding with the United States, or do they want the war to resume? These are two options here, and the president has been clear the United States military remains on high alert if strikes are ordered against the regime. And so these days are going to be tense across the region, and Israeli air defense systems remain on high alert, understanding that if this war does resume, the Iranians are likely to launch more ballistic missiles here.
So, Trey, I find this so fascinating, this idea that, the Israel and the United States both want to make sure there's no nuclear Iran, but ultimately there is daylight between the end game for America and the end game for Israel. The president has many advisors around him. What are they saying? What are they advising? I know one of the concerns that I've heard is that sometimes we have someone we're negotiating with, and then our partner Israel will kill that person, and now we don't have anyone to negotiate with. Talk to me about that problem, but also where you think President Trump's advisors are on wrapping this up as quickly as possible with a deal that satisfies the president versus Israel, who perhaps has a goal or an incentive to continue, and as you said, they have a more existential threat.
President Trump has been quite clear-eyed on the threat from the Iranian regime. Remember, the Iranians, before Operation Epic Fury, came to the negotiating table and they told U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff they had enough highly enriched uranium at 60% purity to quickly go to 90% and create 11 nuclear bombs. That was the opening position of the Iranian regime. They could create 11 nuclear bombs. And the president took them at face value because he also understands the country's ballistic missile program that they're trying to expand the range for, that we saw during that operation was targeting Gulf countries and U.S. ally Israel. But when we look at what the president is being told, he has a lot of advisors. He has top generals who are giving him information about the realities on the ground. And he is being patient because this is not a light decision to make. When you think about what would happen if the president orders renewed strikes against the Iranian regime, the Iranians do not escalate on a vertical escalation ladder. They escalate on a horizontal ladder because they are in a situation where they know they cannot defeat the U.S. military. There is air superiority over the skies of Iran when President Trump orders strikes. And as a result, they escalate around the Gulf and against U.S. ally Israel. Guys?
All right. Thanks so much, Trey. Put it in perspective. I mean, the one thing they all agree on, you got to get the uranium out, and they have to go to zero enrichment. Those two things aren't close. The only thing they might, in terms of funding the proxies, they could say they're not going to fund the proxies, but it's almost impossible unless you change regimes for them to track all the money going there. You can curtail it, but if Hezbollah and Hamas are going to get funded, it's going to come from Iran.
We can't pretend that there aren't domestic concerns happening here. We have gas prices, we have a midterm election, there's a goal, but in the back of the president's head, he's a human being, he's a leader. He's got domestic concerns that are not the same concerns as Israel.
But if you look at if this operation is deemed to be futile and it ends wrong, that'll be worse than domestic concerns. So I think ending the right way is key.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
All I'm telling you, after I do it to his channel, man, we gonna start teaching classes about this shit, bro. You hear me? That's it. That's you. You all in that like the way you did it. I said this nigga giving out game that went over here. I heard you one day. You said, yeah, you niggas dumb. Nigga, I changed location. That's all. This nigga, where's nigga? Where's nigga? Hey, bro. They be after me on this bitch like no bullshit. You know, nigga ain't worried about that shit. But you know, me and my baby mama just got another highs and shit. You know, I got 4 girls at that motherfucker. So nigga, I ain't trying to have none of that negativity over there. So I make sure I'm at my house doing this shit. You know what I'm saying? And then the crazy part, when you think about it, you understand the business because it's a human character. That's not you. I tell everybody, like, me and King was on the phone. I said, my nigga, you gotta learn to separate the character, cause in real life, you ain't finna be joking with no nigga in real life.
Big
See what I'm saying? That's
Jackie Heinrich asking him where things stand right now.
Right on the borderline, believe me. If we don't get the right answers, it goes very quickly. We're all ready to go. We have to get the right answers. It would have to be a complete 100% good answers. And if we do, we save a lot of time, energy, and lives, most importantly.
Meantime, dramatic new video of Marines boarding an Iranian-flagged tanker that CENTCOM says is suspected of attempting to violate the U.S. blockade in the Gulf of Oman. Let's bring in retired Vice Admiral Mark Fox. His nearly 40-year career in the Navy includes his service as commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. Admiral, it's great to have you on the show, as always. You think the president should restart military activities, reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I'm just curious, sir, How does that work exactly?
Well, this president is unconventional, he's unorthodox, and he's unpredictable. And that's one of his strengths right now. I think he's been able to keep people off balance. I do think, personally, that there's no way in the world that we can accomplish all of our objectives in the region without having further combat actions. I just don't see how it can happen. But I've been wrong before. We'll see. The Strait of Hormuz actually is not closed. It's a matter of whether or not you want to take the risk to go through there. But we need to have full and open freedom of navigation very soon here so that we can allow the rest of the world to benefit from the energy that flows from that part of the world.
You talk about unpredictable. I want to put this up on the screen. This is the Iranian parliament speaker, Galibaf, on Telegram today. He writes the following here. Our powerful military forces have used the opportunity of the ceasefire in the best possible way to rebuild our military strength. And with the grace of God and the support of the people today, they are so prepared that they will surprise the enemy and will certainly regret attacking Iran. It sounds like they're almost taunting the United States. Sir, what do you think about that comment?
Well, anything that comes out of the regime, the government of Iran is suspect. They're playing for time. They're trying to create as much opportunity for them to try to rebuild. Militarily, they have no capability. They have very, very limited ability to influence anything. At the same time, they do have some residual capability in small boats and with drones and so forth, which takes me back to I don't see how we can go forward and accomplish all of our stated objectives without having some return to full combat operations.
Yeah, I'm also kind of curious because there's been a lot of talk about Cargill and what happens. I mean, does it include this strategy going after Cargill and holding it at least? Maybe not destroying the oil wells, but holding it. And how long would that campaign last? I mean, does the American population have the patience for something like that?
I personally wouldn't recommend that we go and take Cargill. We can certainly disable their ability to load oil. Our campaign, the combat campaign that we had before, very carefully avoided certain target sets, which includes the electrical grid, their telecommunications, a lot of the things that we would call dual use. So there are certainly a number of other things that we are capable of striking, which are legitimate military targets. I would not recommend that we go and take Cargill. There are other options. There are other places that we can go that will create difficulties for the Iranians. I would not, though, plan or recommend that we take Cargill. Cargill is just a big industrial place that's just off the coast. It's not that far away. So if we took it, then there would be, constant opportunity for them to take pot shots at us from the shore.
Yeah, I wanted to pose this to you. Lastly, this is from the Institute for the Study of War, saying, quote, other factors such as, but not limited to, a proven threat to regime stability could trigger among Iranian leaders about their negotiation positions. Iranian leaders have proven that they care little for the economic well-being of the Iranian people beyond the impact the economic well-being of the people has on the regime. I mean, it's one of those things, we kind of know this all along, sir, but it's worth restating that, there's not a lot of concern for what's happened to the citizens, but there's a big concern about the IRGC and the Basij and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the Iranian regime has not changed their stripes. What I would expect if we go back into combat operations is that there would be other opportunities. I think in particular the Mossad has penetrated the Iranian regime fairly significantly. When you think about the capability that was demonstrated at the very beginning of the early campaign back in late February, early March, in which dozens of Iranian leaders were killed in the opening minutes. That's some remarkable capability, and I would fully expect that if we resumed combat operations, those people would also be in that list.
Vice Admiral Mark Fox, thank you, sir. We appreciate your time as always.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes, and we'll spot you up to $200.
Recognition of the war on Iran, that could happen the moment President Trump says go. It is day 43 of the ceasefire on life support, as I put it, and the White House says the U.S. military is locked and loaded if talks with Iran fail. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Here is Vice President J.D. Vance.
We have an opportunity here, I think, to reset the relationship that has existed between Iran and the United States for 47 years. That's what the president has asked us to do, and that's what we're going to keep on working at. But it takes two to tango. We are not going to have a deal that allows the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. So as the president just told me, we're locked and loaded. We don't want to go down that pathway, but the president is willing and able to go down that pathway if we have to.
President Trump says Iran is feeling the pressure, and he is not ruling out anything about what comes next.
We'd have to open the strait. That would open immediately. So we're going to give this one shot. I'm in no hurry. You never think, oh, the midterms, I'm in a hurry. I'm in no hurry. Ideally, I'd like to see few people killed as opposed to a lot. We can do it either way, but I'd like to see few people killed. What we've done is amazing, and we have them decimated. Iran is decimated.
Former CENTCOM Naval Forces Commander Vice Admiral John Fozzie Miller is with me. I'll go first, though, to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst. Trey.
Harris, good morning. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly held a lengthy phone call overnight as the region waits to see if the war will resume. Earlier, President Trump discussed his relationship and coordination with the Israeli leader.
What have you said to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Iran and how long to hold off on strike?
He's fine. He'll do whatever I want him to do. He's a very, very good man. He'll do whatever I want him to do, and he's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy.
You're on the same page with him on Iran?
Yeah.
These comments come amid a massive U.S. military buildup across the Middle East. New video shows U.S. refuelers parked at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport, waiting in case President Trump orders new strikes against the Iranian regime. Overnight, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released a new threat, warning the United States and Israel against launching another bombing campaign. The IRGC put out a statement saying if the aggression against Iran is repeated, the regional war that was promised will this time go beyond the borders of the region, and you will be dealt crushing blows in places you do not expect, and you will fall into the abyss of defeat and destruction. The threat comes as President Trump says he was just an hour away from deciding to strike Iran earlier this week and is giving the regime a few additional days to reach a deal. As for the possibility of an agreement, reports do indicate there are still serious gaps in the positions of the United States and Iran. Vice President J.D. Vance was asked about this process yesterday.
And so what we've done is tried to be as clear as possible. What are our red lines? What are the things that we're willing to be accommodating on? And what are the things that we absolutely must have? And as the president has said ad nauseum, and I think I've said it a lot too, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Inside Iran, the regime has released new videos showing civilians learning how to use small arms. A variety of similar videos have been published in recent days as Iran vows to fight the United States.
Definitely we will stand against them and won't give up even an inch of our soil. We are even ready to sacrifice our blood, our lives, instead of giving them an inch of our soil. No matter they come from the sea or land, we will stand by our flag.
Overnight, the Israelis held a 5-hour cabinet meeting preparing for the possibility that the war resumes.
They don't want you to know about it.
Hey,
the war resumes. Harris.
Trey, thank you very much. Let's go now to Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis and what he had to say in this new opinion piece for FoxNews.com. He argues that the United States faces a fundamental fork in the road. And here's part of it. The real fork is not escalation versus diplomacy. It is this: accept a nuclear-capable Iran as the permanent outcome of this war, or accept the cost of physically removing the threat. Washington should make that decision deliberately, not by default, when the ceasefire finally collapses. All of that a quote. In focus with me now, Vice Admiral John Fozzie Miller, former Central Naval Forces Commander. Great to have you, sir. So what is your reaction to the idea that this is really bifurcated, one thing or the other?
Well, I think, Harrison, thanks for having me. It's really always been that at the end of the conflict, Iran wasn't going to be able to develop or have a nuclear weapon for their employment somewhere in the region or elsewhere in the world. And so it's sort of crystallized, I think, in everyone's mind now. But a satisfactory outcome has to include the fact that the Iranians will not have access to a nuclear weapon. They won't be able to develop a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, what I caught there, and I mean, I've heard this, and like you say, we know this. You didn't say end of ceasefire. You said the end of the conflict, which can be something very different depending on what happens next. An op-ed argues Iran is gambling that President Trump will cave. It hasn't gone well for them so far. And, quote, if the Islamic Republic continues testing American resolve, the next confrontation may no longer resemble calibrated deterrence. It may become the moment that determines whether Trump's Iran doctrine was merely pressure or the beginning of historic change. Your take?
Well, I think the president's been very clear that one way or another, at the conclusion of the conflict, Iran will not be able to have a nuclear weapon, and they won't be able to threaten their neighbors and do things like close the Strait of Hormuz. He would obviously prefer to do that through some sort of a negotiation, but he's also clearly indicated that if he has to resort to combat power, he'll do that. And the combat power is available. It's there. It's ready. And I think it's very clear to the Iranian regime that they're not going to prevail in this conflict one way or another. And I think they're beginning to get an understanding that the president has a lot of patience, but that patience is not without limit.
Right. And this idea that their country can kind of outlast ours is a bit ridiculous anyway, because they're the people who got hit in the first place and didn't see it coming. Vice Admiral, I am curious about a little bit of strategy now. Exactly what happens if we're so-called locked and loaded, like the White House says?
Well, there's a number of ways this could go, and the president has a whole range of options available to him. What I would expect, though, is that we would see immediate pressure on their leadership once again, so the potential for additional decapitation strikes. I think a lot of pressure on their command and control systems, the systems that allow them to communicate from Tehran or wherever they are down into the Strait of Hormuz region to the Revolutionary Guard folks, and then a lot of pressure in the Strait of Hormuz itself against potential cruise missile sites, places where they can launch drones, and of course against the small boats that they like to send out into the Gulf to harass the shipping. And I think you'll see a focus on all of that as a way to move the negotiations forward, or the conditions for the negotiations forward. And then absent that, I think you'll see a greater sense of warfare across the country again.
Casham, Karg Island, those areas that we know are tremendously important to the oil infrastructure, and any way that they can get a source of cash into that country, Iran. Do we go after those islands with our military?
I don't know that there's a need to go after Karg Island, because things are pretty quiet there right now and have been for several weeks, because the Iranians can't find ships to get into Karg Island to fill them up and export their oil. So that part of the blockade has been extraordinarily effective. There are some other islands closer to the strait that we might be interested in occupying for a period of time, because it helps with control of the strait. At the end of the day, the United States doesn't want control of the strait. We want the strait to be open for everyone to use.
All right, Vice Admiral, the president is getting ready to speak. Just a quick thought about what you'd like to hear him say on Iran as he talks with the Coast Guard cadets today.
Well, first of all, congratulations to them and welcome. We're glad to have them on board the team. Coast Guards are a great partner of all of the armed forces. I think the president will be pretty clear about the role that forces like the Coast Guard will play in the conclusion of the Iran conflict, whether it's a deterrent as a hedge against further aggression on the part of the United States in order to end the conflict, or their actual participation in combat operations, and an understanding that when we get the Iran conflict concluded, we still live in a difficult and dangerous world, and organizations like the Coast Guard, which ensure freedom of navigation all over the place, as well as safety of our mariners, is incredibly important, and they're entering a brave new world, and we're certainly glad to have them on board.
Vice Admiral John Fozzie Miller, I can tell how many men and women you have led. You were so prepared with that. I appreciate it as a leader, sir. It's humbling. Thank you. Good to see you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Wish I would have known about this sooner. Definitely could have helped me in the past, but at least I can use it now. Yesterday,
President Trump is slamming Iran's latest attempt to end the war.
It comes as the fragile ceasefire is being tested after a cargo ship was struck and set ablaze off of Qatar's coast.
Yep, Chief Correspondent Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. President Trump reacted overnight to the Iranian response to the U.S. peace proposal. The president posting on Truth Social, quote, "I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable." In another post, he went on to say, in part, "For 47 years, the Iranians have been tapping U.S. along, keeping us waiting, killing our people with their roadside bombs, destroying protests, and recently wiping out 42,000 innocent unarmed protesters and laughing at our now great again country. They will be laughing no longer." Iranian state media reported the response included security of the Strait of Hormuz and an end to the war, but did not address the key Trump administration demand to address Iran's nuclear program. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed a similar sentiment in an interview over the weekend, saying the war isn't over yet because Iran still has nuclear material.
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There's still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
It's better than war.
The Wall Street Journal reports that the latest response doesn't resolve the U.S. demand for commitments in advance on the fate of Iran's nuclear program and its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Nuclear issues would be negotiated over the next 30 days, they said. Iran proposes to have some of its highly enriched uranium diluted and the rest transferred to a third country, the people said. Now, Reuters reports that a spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry claimed the response was not a...
Shout out to everybody coming through, y'all. Double tap the screen. Let's get these likes up. Put me in the algorithm, y'all.
Excessive, and that the United States continues to have unreasonable demands. The demands for the United States are very clear, that Iran will never have a nuclear program and pursue a nuclear weapon. The president has given the Iranians two options: to sign on the dotted line or the war could resume. Guys?
Trey, is the president to believe, does he know who he's dealing with? Is he dealing with the foreign minister and speaker, or is he dealing with the IRGC? Because this latest proposal is a huge step back. I mean, they're not going to turn over their nuclear, 1,000 pounds of nuclear of enriched uranium. They're going to continue to enrich. I mean, this is a total non-starter. It makes me think the IRGC is taking over.
Yeah, I think the president understands exactly who he's dealing with, despite the fact the Iranians will put forward the foreign minister or Kalibaf, the parliament speaker, or Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Behind the scenes, the IRGC, these hardliners, are actually calling the shots, and they are swaying the negotiations so that they could ultimately get what they want. And the president understands that, and that is part of the reason he has called this latest Iranian response unacceptable. And when we talk about the highly enriched uranium, this is very important to dig down into. We're talking about 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium at around 60% purity. This is just one step away from 90% purity, which is weapons-grade material. And the Iranians admitted before this began they had enough highly enriched uranium to create 11 nuclear bombs. Well, President Trump heard what they said, and he took them at face value. And that's the reason Operation Epic Fury began. And now, according to the initial reports, they are unwilling to adhere to the terms that were set forward by U.S. negotiators, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. And so it puts the United States in a position where they have to go back to the Situation Room and have to make serious considerations about what the Iranians are willing to give up, understanding that the IRGC is controlling things behind the scenes.
So, Trey, we keep hearing two things from the administration about the Gulf states and Pakistan. So Pakistan is essentially saying, hey, wait, there's a deal that can be done. But we also heard over the weekend that the Gulf states were worried about this proposal in the sense when the president was going to do this blockade, try to get folks, some of these ships to go through, and they were afraid that they were going to get attacked. Are they not equipped to respond back?
I'm actually shaking right now. Look at this. I just got a notice of a $58,000 settlement.
Are they not equipped to respond back?
These Gulf states are very concerned because they really are the front line in this broader war against Iran, understanding that while the Iranians have a limited supply of long-range ballistic missiles that they fired at Israel, for example, and even countries like Turkey, the shorter-range cruise missiles and the drones that they can launch from their coast in these cities like Bandar Abbas or even close to Qeshm Island, it is a major threat to countries like the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and others. And we even saw yesterday the Iranians sent drones over the skies of the UAE and Kuwait as the United States was waiting for the response from the Iranian delegation. And it just shows you how serious Iran is about actually creating a stable situation in the region. And that's not to mention the Strait of Hormuz, where the Iranian Navy, despite the fact the majority of their large ships are at the bottom of the sea, they still have the ability along the coast to launch things like drones and cruise missiles, or even these smaller vessels to try and disrupt international shipping. And so the president not only wants to ensure that there is security in the Strait of Hormuz, despite the fact that the United States doesn't rely as heavily as other countries like the Europeans on this critical waterway, but he also wants to make sure that the Iranians are not pursuing a nuclear weapon. And that involves ensuring that the highly enriched uranium that is already buried deep underground in the aftermath of Operation Midnight Hammer last summer is exported from Iran and taken, according to President Trump, to the United States. But it's also making sure that these centrifuges and the other capabilities that the Iranians maintain are dismantled. And if the Iranians are unwilling to ensure that they cannot move forward with a nuclear program or rebuild in the years ahead, we're likely looking at a situation where the region returns to war.
Say, oh, Lord. Well, thank you so much, Trey. The whole reason we got involved in this is because of the nuclear weapons that we thought that Iran was capable of making. And we did, and as Trey just said, the president took them at their word, said that they were very close to enriching, full enrichment, and they have enough to create these nuclear weapons. The question is, do we go in and get the enriched uranium? Benjamin Netanyahu said over the weekend, this is not over. There's still work to be done. He said the enriched uranium must be removed from Iran, and he believes that can be done physically. Do the Israelis do it? Do the Americans do it?
Both. Well, I think it's a joint operation. I will say I was disappointed with Admiral McCraven over the weekend as I saw him on the Sunday shows, and he essentially said that we're not in a better spot than we were before. There is no doubt in my mind, taking out the Ayatollah, a lot of their leadership has put us in a better position. Are we on the 5-yard line? Of course, but the president had to take this action.
But I would say the most disappointing was Senator Mark Kelly. He said the Pentagon is showing a shocking depletion of U.S. munitions, Tomahawks, ATACMS, SM-3 THAADs, and Patriot interceptors from a classified briefing.
Couldn't believe he did that.
So, number one, are you an American first, fighter pilot, astronaut? Do you really think this works to our advantage to tell the world that we're out of this? Plus, this is a oversimplification. We are out of some things. We're running low. Absolutely. It's something we've known for 10 years. We've been unable to respond to quickly putting together this sophisticated weapons, all right? But there's other things we're not running low on. So at the very least, there are some things, the way you handle the past, there's some things we're definitely concerned about.